Hi everyone, welcome back to Serving Up Plumbing with your master plumber, me, David Butler. Today we're going to be talking about some old school plumbing, brass closet flanges. Well, brass closet flanges also mean lead stubbing up through the slab. But before we get to that, please make sure and hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up if you like this video, and let me know what you'd like to see in the future. Now, let's talk some old school plumbing. Here we are on a training deck that I built just for teaching how to solder brass flanges on. As you can see, we've got a brass flange here. You can kind of see this one in the picture. There's 3 on this deck here. This helps us teach guys without having to be on a house or anywhere else. You can learn to solder it. Now granted, this is a little bit easier to do it here than it is maybe in a house. This is a brand new lead stub I've got here that we've got put in here. Makes it easier with new lead than it does with old. With old lead, you've got a lot of cleanup that you need to do. Ideally, you don't want to ever use an old flange. You want to get a nice new flange. They're good and clean. They're going to make a better setup for you. This one happens to be a heavy duty one. I love this particular flange. Some of them have only 3 holes in them and they're a little bit thinner brass. The better, heavier brass one you can get, the better off you are. Now, why do we do this? Sometimes there's still old lead stubs coming up out of the toilet closet arms. And oftentimes people don't need to bust out the whole floor to fix this. We can even extend the lead up if we have to. We have the standard brass flange like this, and we have the extra deep flange like this right here, just in case the lead happened to be far below the floor. If it's down up to 1 inch below the floor, you can still make this solder joint right here. Tap it out, clean it up, and we can still hook it on. So you've got a good inch to play with there in case the lead gets broken off flush with the floor or a little bit below. So this is a deep brass flange, and these come in really handy too, especially when you're repairing one. We're going to use the regular brass flange today and see how we're supposed to install it. So we're going to solder this on, and this is what we kind of call cold soldering. We use 50-50 solder. We use solder that has lead in it. The 50-50 has lead in it. It's 50% lead, 50% tin, nickel. That solder should never be used for potable water. But because we're doing lead right here, the newer lead-free solders that we have melt at a much higher temperature than the lead melts. So they don't do a very good job of soldering on a brass flange on lead. So we want to make sure and use 50-50 or 60-40 solder. Use it only for doing sanitary sewer. We want to make sure, just like with everything else we join, that we get everything clean. As I mentioned, this is nice and clean. Fresh lead, fresh brass. When you're replacing an old brass flange, it's going to be nasty and messy. It's going to have old wax on it, all kinds of things. The lead's going to be corroded. So we're going to take an old fitting brush, not preferably a new one, but an old one, and you want to scrub down the lead, the outside. Scrub all this down and get it nice, clean, and shiny all the way around. Clean this top edge off too, so that we've got nice shiny lead here. Just like with any type of material we're joining, it needs to be clean. Same thing with the flange. You can clean it with a fitting brush like this. You can use sand cloth, sand it inside. Also, we want to sand the top edge right here because some of our solder may be on top here. So make sure we get this clean. If we can't get down in there good, get you a fitting brush and scrub the top of it so that it'll get that brass good and clean so that it'll stick. We get that good and cleaned up, our flange is ready to go on. Now, you notice these holes in this flange. We want to make sure this flange is anchored. A lot of the older brass flanges, they just let the strength of the lead hold the flange down. And that's why you have so many of them that get torn off of the lead. Well, it's code now on everything that we anchor flanges to the floor. So, we're going to anchor this flange to the floor. If we were in concrete, these Tapcon screws work really well. Just drill you a hole down into the concrete slab and anchor it with these. Now, one of the most important things when you're anchoring a flange, and I've seen many of young plumber make this mistake, these are the slots that the bolts slide into. You need to make sure that you line it up to where your bolts can sit on both sides. One bolt's going to be here, one's here, and it's even got a little play to go forward and backwards. You don't want to turn it to where these square slots are sitting where your bolts go. Your bolts will pull out. You should drop your bolt in, slide it to this point, and your bolts should set straight across the center of your lead, right there. Your closet bolts should fit right in there. All right, we've anchored our flange down properly. We know it's right so that the closet bolts are going to fit. Generally, we don't want to put the closet bolts in until after we've soldered it. Now, as with most solder, we're going to need flux. Even though we're using 50-50 solder, we still need flux, and most of us are only carrying Aquaflux nowadays. Aquaflux works good. The old no corrode works good. I don't recommend C-Flux. It's too corrosive unless it is lead-free C-Flux. Your flux, as we talked about before, make sure it's good fresh flux. If it's not, stir it up a little bit. Get some good flux going. And on this case, we're going to flux all around here. One thing about it, when you're soldering copper for water, you don't want to use too much flux. When you're soldering lead to brass, you need to use a lot of flux. In fact, you may even use the flux while you're soldering it. Coat everything really good with flux, and we'll probably add some again later. Now, you're going to take a good ball peen hammer is the best. You can use any type of hammer. A good old ball peen works the best for me, and it gives you a little bit of a round tip also if you need to. Now we're going to hammer the lead out. There we have it. Is that not beautiful? Perfect round joint here. We've got a solid piece of lead all the way around the corner. Now in this particular instance, we've got plenty of lead. We're going to run a bead of solder around this outer edge right here and seal this off. Most of your water is all going to be right here sealed. The solder is going to make a watertight seal. The wax will also help that, but the solder basically makes everything good and sealed. It is not what's holding the flange to the floor. That way you don't rip this flange off the next time you pull the toilet up. So let's put some solder on this and see how it works. Now remember, we talked it was going to be like cold soldering is what we talk about, because the lead melts at a lower temperature than the 50-50 solder, although they're very close. So watch very closely, see how I do it. We're going to go around and we're going to get solder to suck up first really good and go underneath and down underneath so it gives us a little strength. And then we're going to come back with a very cold flame and we're going to put a cap around the edges to seal off that joint. Make sure before you solder, you put on your personal protection equipment. You need a good pair of safety glasses to go on because solder can splash in your eye and you don't want to lose an eye over it. Also, make sure you have a good pair of gloves of some sort. Cotton gloves will work. Don't use rubber gloves. Now these are a cut-proof glove. They're not just regular rubber gloves like nitrile or latex. Something like this is fine, but don't use the regular pull-on nitrile gloves or something that we use for sanitary reasons. We've got our roll of solder here. Let's pull some solder off so we've got it like that. Move the flux back out of the way and let's solder this. We're going to put most of our heat on the brass to start with because we want the brass to melt the lead. And as you can see, if we don't like what we got here, you can always take it and tap it down a little bit harder. So let's get the brass hot enough for the lead to stick to it. You can see if I'm not careful, I'll get my lead to melting there too. We don't want that. So I'm going to try and follow all the way around here, and I don't want to put too much heat facing right at my lead. I want my heat mostly on my brass. You watch closely, you can see the solder suck up under there. One more thing we didn't mention, but always make sure you've got you a good fire extinguisher close by. Don't want to get the lead too hot there. You can see I'm melting the lead a little bit. You got to be real careful with that. Again, I'm making a first pass to get some solder in there and get a A little bit of pre-tinning done and solder to soak up underneath the lead. Now, you can take your flux brush, flux around it, get you some more flux on there. You're usually going to burn up your flux brush when you do this, but that's all right. You're going to get a new flange on there. Now, we're going to hold the torch further away, and we're just going to put a cold solder cap on here. Just like so. Make us a bead on here. Kind of build it up around the edge. If it starts sucking down, pull the torch further back and off. Let it cool down a little bit. I can even fill in that gap where the lead melted. And if you ever do get a cut or something inside the lead, down inside here, you can actually repair that with solder like this also. You just have to do a really cold solder. See how far back I'm holding my torch, because I don't want to get it near as hot as I did the first time. If it doesn't stick the way you need it, put some more flux. You'd never do this on a regular water line, but when you're doing lead to brass, you don't want to get too much solder in your track here for your closet arm, your bolt I mean. And if you get it too hot, you see what happens real quick, it'll melt down. This is something that takes some practice sometimes to do. Don't worry if you get it over your bolt there. Sometimes the direction of your torch makes a difference too. Starting to notice this can be a bit of a tedious process. If you need to at the end of it all, you want to smooth something out, you can do that with your flux. If it's still hot, it'll kind of smooth it off. You can see how that goes. Makes for a nice smooth joint right there. And that's how you solder one in. You make sure it's anchored. Don't worry if it gets over the screws. That'll be, hopefully you never have to remove this flange again. I wanted you to notice we've got kind of a hole right here. So what are we going to do if we have a hole there? We're going to fill it in. So we've already put some flux on there. We're talking about a cold solder. And we've got our hole filled in right there. You can leave it alone. If you wanted to, you could brush some flux around it. Just don't brush it out of the hole. Seal the hole off really good that way. You don't want to leave any high bumps like this. If you do, heat them up and knock them off really quick. You don't want that to cause a problem with your wax making a proper seal. Now brass flanges, as you can see, this one the lead folds way out. Usually the lead doesn't come this far out, but this makes a really good one. That also gives you the ability, if you ever need to put a new flange down, it gives you some extra lead to play with later. I always try and think about the next plumber that might be coming down the road. If you have to remove this flange, you take the screws out, you can heat this up around here. You take a torch, you heat up this area, you put you a screwdriver like this under it and just slowly peel this edge up right here so that you can get that lead to work loose. In fact, I'll do that for you real quick right now just to give you an idea of what we would have to do if we were going to replace this flange. You do it very gently so that you don't damage the lead any more than you have to. So let's say we were going to replace this flange. We're going to heat this up right here and heat the brass mainly. We see that the lead starts getting loose. We want to work our screwdriver under it like so. Don't get the lead too hot. You can bend it on up to where it's going to be straight up and down. And we're going to do this all the way around, working that lead up to where it's all pointing straight up. Put a new flange down, screw the new flange down, and hammer the lead back down over the edges. Then we can solder it again. You can also take just a pair of tin snips and trim this lead off if you need to get you a straighter, better edge to solder to. And that's pretty much how you solder a brass flange back onto a lead closet arm. Now, if the lead is too far down below the floor, they do make what we call a 6-inch Dutchman. The Dutchman is a lead extension. It's tapered on one end, as you can see in the picture. That Dutchman will slide right down inside. You flare the lead out and you solder that Dutchman inside down into the floor. You may have to chip a little concrete out around here, but this will keep you from having to break the whole floor out, retiling the floor and everything else. You can put that lead extension in there, do a cold solder bead around the lead, put the flange on, do it again, solder the flange on, anchor the flange, and you've got a lead repair without having to bust their entire floor out. Well, we know you don't see them all the time, but when you run into a brass flange, now hopefully you'll know what to do to repair it. Because we don't always need to break into the slab. Brass flanges, as we've talked about, are great flanges. They'll last forever. So now you know how to do it. Thanks again for watching. Please give it a thumbs up. Let me know what you'd like to see in the future, and let me know what you think about this video. Hope to see you next time. And don't forget, tell your friends the Butler did it.